Hello everyone, it's Naya Shell, the creator of Meditation Matters. And today, after my silent meditation, I decided to read the I Ching, which I'll show you quickly what that is and kind of what that means. So I Ching is also known as a book of changes. It's backwards for you, but it's a really awesome book here, and it's essentially known as a guide for life, right? It's a traditional Chinese text that, it's based on numbers and symbols. So here I'll show you the page. So this is what they call different hexagrams that come together, and you match them based, like this matches whatever's on the top, right? So the X, essentially like the X and Y axis, but this being the X axis on the top and the Y axis on the bottom. And how you end up figuring out what the I Ching reading is for today is you use coins. You toss coins, and the tails would be 2 points and the heads would be 3 points. And so you would use 3 coins and you toss them. Here I have 3 pennies. And usually before I begin tossing the coins, I simply just say a prayer or I ask a question, right, to the universe. So I'll give an example of a question that I asked for today was additional guidance for creating more content for Meditation Matters or for networking or whatever it may be, right? So just asking for overall guidance and counseling. And so then I begin to toss the coins, right? And I toss them 6 times. The first 3 tosses end up being the lower row, right? The lower hexagram. You always start from the bottom going up. So the lower hexagram is the first 3. There are such things as changing lines, and then there's additional text that you would read for a changing line, means that it needs your attention right now. You need to read that. And changing lines would be 6 and 9. Now, the even numbers are going to be dashed, whereas the odd numbers are going to be straight lines. So here, I'll give you an example here. So here is one hexagram. I haven't rolled this today, but as you can see, the even numbers, they're dashed, the odd numbers are lines here. And in the beginning of this book is by Brian Brown Walker, can be found on Amazon. They do have text in the beginning that really explains everything, the purpose of the I Ching, how to actually do it, if you find yourself very interested in exploring this method of reading. But anyway, so I did today's reading on the 25th of February, 2019, and I was guided to go to the hexagram 16. And honestly, I'll get to the reason why I made this video very shortly. And the title of it is Enthusiasm. The elements that are in this are Earth being the base hexagram, the lower hexagram, or the first one that I rolled, and thunder being the top. And then the comment here is proper enthusiasm opens every door. And to briefly read over some major points that I pulled from this reading is that the I Ching teaches that there are 2 kinds of enthusiasm, one that leads to misfortune and one that leads to success. This hexagram comes as a sign that you can proceed with confidence now if your enthusiasm is properly founded. Now, remember, I asked the question, what should be my next steps with Meditation Matters, the brand and the company I'm forming? So that's the first paragraph of this. Second paragraph, improper enthusiasm is fueled by the desires of the ego. People often desire recognition, wealth, power, or freedom from difficulty. Such desires can become so great that we will do anything to achieve them. Our energy rises as we wildly pursue our goal, but this unruly and egotistical enthusiasm inevitably leads us into incorrect and imbalanced behavior and into misfortune. Proper enthusiasm, on the other hand, is fueled by devotion to attaining and expressing inner balance and inner truth. When your aim is not to influence others or to satisfy your ego, but to follow the guidance of the higher power in all that you do, You acquire another kind of energy, a balanced and bottomless eagerness for living in step with what is right and good. In this, there is true power and true grace. This hexagram reminds you that striving out of your ego now will only push you further away from your goals. Seek instead to follow proper principles. Keep to what is innocent, correct, and kind, and the creative will come to your aid. The path of truth is always the path of least resistance. So I also got a changing line, my third line in my base hexagram being that of Earth. I received a 6, and that's a changing line. And so I'm going to read, this is what the changing line section looks like in this book, right? There are other I Ching books that they have a different setup. They might have more verbiage, more paragraphs, more, more whatever. The words might be a little bit different. I do like this book a lot. It puts things quite simply and straightforward. I read other I Chings that are very much so profound and wonderful to read, but this book I feel is very awesome in terms of keeping it relatively simple to understand. So the third line, that is my changing line, I'll read, don't rely on others to direct your conduct. Be determined and holding to the good at every turn. And I feel like the reason why I read this to you all is because I feel like it's a really good way to remember the importance of staying true to yourself, staying true to your mission, and staying true to the higher power and to the creative, to God, whatever it is that you want to call the all-encompassing that is oneness, that is then expressed in this individuality that is us. Is to remember to always, in the good, the bad, the amazing, and the deep bearings of suffering, to always look to the higher power for assistance and guidance. The ego is a strong thing. I mean, I'm human. I'm a spiritual being living a human experience just as you are. But, the human experience can be very enticing. It can take over. It can be very overwhelming, very overbearing. I mean, I've mentioned before, I have definitely in my past suffered a lot from anxiety, a lot from overthinking, a lot from worrying, a lot from being afraid, depression, all of it. And I know so many of us tend to suffer from these things, being stressed out to our wits' end and not knowing what to do. But what's really amazing about reading this excerpt after asking the question that I asked, because when you're creating a business, there's that up and that down, and you're going to experience that emotionally. You may go through stress. You may go for times where you're not feeling inspired, you're not feeling creative. Whatever it may be, you're going to experience all types of different things. And here it's just saying, remember to stay true to your inner self. Your inner self will always exceed the ego. The inner self will guide you as like a compass. And it will always, always, always exceed the intense desires of the ego. It's easy. It's easy to want power. It's easy to want wealth. It's easy to want immense freedom. But actually, what's interesting about wanting freedom is that what comes when we truly seek freedom, we must seek to let go of the desires of our ego. And once we no longer entertain so aggressively and immediately the desires of our ego, we are able to achieve freedom, and we are able to go above and to stay above the ego. So that even when we are tempted again by these worldly pleasures, by anything that we may be desiring of the ego, we do have a more objective look. And we're like, well, I don't necessarily need to do that. Or, well, okay, I'm being tempted in this way, or I'm being tempted to be aggressive right now, to be very, to be rude, to be overly ambitious to the point where it's unhealthy for others, including myself, to engage in activity that does not promote healing or promote a raising vibration for others, for myself and others around me. So, I just think it's really awesome to really reinforce like proper enthusiasm is fueled by devotion and attaining a devotion to attaining and expressing any balance and inner truth, which then reinforces the importance of knowing your inner truth, connecting to your inner truth, and having inner balance. How do we do that? There's so many different ways. I have a daily practice where I wake up, I do yoga, and possibly sometimes some I Ching, typically yes. And then I sit in silent meditation. And a meditation I begin to incorporate in my own personal meditations is a heart awakening practice technique, where I either use a crystal or just my hands, either placing my whole hand over my heart, just a simple finger touch, or prayer hands, or any other way that makes sense for you to be able to touch, that works for you to touch your heart center. Then I sit in deep breathing, right? So being very intentional to focus on having your breathing come through the diaphragm here. A lot of times we're breathing up here and are just our lungs, but a lot of deep balancing breathing comes when we focus it down in our diaphragm. And that's really just, you're just poking at your stomach here when you're breathing, doing deep breathing. And so what I'll do is I'll hold it for counts of 4 or counts of 5, and then I'll release for counts of 4 or counts of 5. So in and out, counts of 4 or counts of 5. I recommend you doing counts of 5. Then after a few times of doing your deep breath, you take the time to, begin to imagine the feelings of care. And no, what's important, why do I say touch? Why touch? So after I was listening to a recent, this technique recently, the touch brings your awareness to that area. So if I was to touch this part of my body, my arm, my awareness is going to come to this part of my body. Or if I touch my foot, or I touch my shoulder, my awareness is now going to where I'm touching. So if you're touching your heart center, your awareness is going here. And now you're beginning to feel the vibrations, you're beginning to feel the energy, you're beginning to feel whatever feelings that are surrounding that area. And what we're going to do is really just focus our attention on the feelings of care. What do you allow yourself to feel? Care, feel appreciation, whatever it may be. It could be a person, a place, an animal. It could be a thing. Just somebody that brings you, that you can allow you to feel that feeling of care and appreciation and gratitude and compassion. If you can allow yourself to focus on one of those 4 feelings or all of them, and you allow yourself to sit with that for a few minutes, moments, however long you can, and you're still just breathing, but you're not really focusing on your deep breathing as much anymore. You're focusing on the feeling here. And then you allow yourself to eventually come out of that feeling. And you can remove your hand or your rock or whatever you've decided, your crystal, whatever you've decided to place there to focus your attention there. And then you can just sit and breathe for as long as you desire to. This deep diaphragmatic breathing it sends the trigger to your body to know that you are safe and that you can, in fact, relax and breathe quite deeply. And so that's one example of how you can practice inner balance. And that also allows you to connect to your inner truth. What you're doing is you're connecting to your heart. You're activating that heart consciousness. That is your inner truth. And it will guide you. And it will remind you to remain connected to the higher power and to higher truth, and to seek guidance from the higher power, the creative God, the truth. And to be open to the guidance, to be receptive to the guidance. Because you can seek guidance all you want. We can always ask for divine guidance and divine signals. But if we get a signal and we decide that we don't want to pay attention to the signal, then what really was our intention behind asking for divine guidance and divine truth? Was our ego involved there? Or do we not truly believe in ourselves, or believe in the questions that we ask, or believe that we would actually receive an answer to our questions? A big reason why I meditate is because I actually, in fact, do receive an answer to my question. I will ask a question before I meditate, and as I'm coming out of my meditation, I have an answer to the question. It could be a work-related question. I'm a little bit stumped on a project. I ask a question. I come out knowing the answer to that question. The answers come in different ways. It might either be like an interesting voice, just a feeling, a hunch, it may just be some sort of a guidance, or like, oh yeah, that's a great thing. I need to look into that. You know what I mean? So just life is an amazing thing, and it can be very tempting. Our enthusiasm can be pushed to focus on more of the aggressive pieces of life, to forcefully work for ourselves in an intense manner to attain wealth and power and freedom in any means necessary. And I'm going to say that any means necessary is not necessarily going to bring you abundance in a manner in which you feel truly satisfies you completely. But instead, you can achieve abundance that satisfies you on a deep, deep soul or esoteric level that resonates with your entire being, both as a human and as a spiritual being. If you push yourself to remain aligned and to keep your enthusiasm rooted in your true essence, your true self, that can be guided and rooted out with your heart consciousness by practicing that technique there, and by continuing to stay aligned and connected to the higher power. That is truly amazing. And usually it's just a simple conversation. You can just say out loud. You can ask a question. You can just breathe and begin to believe. Especially if you've never believed before. Slowly begin to believe. Slowly begin to meditate. Slowly begin to ask yourself, where is your enthusiasm rooted? What are you truly seeking? What do you really want? Where are your intentions? And best of all, another great question to ask yourself, if things were to go wrong in my life, become unpleasant, or if I experience suffering, what do I do? Where do I turn? Where does my focus go to? What feelings do I experience? And what do I allow for? Do I allow myself to ask questions, to seek guidance? Or do I only wallow in the fact that I don't want to experience this at all? So I'm doing everything in my power not to experience this, when actually, indeed, the experience is necessary to learn a lesson and to move up and to continue to express your deepest and your inner truth. The reality is that when you experience suffering, there's always light in the suffering. There's always grace in the suffering. There's always a lesson in the suffering. There's always an ability for you to come back in touch, to be recentered, and to be filled with your inner truth, your inner balance, innocence, kindness, compassion, joy, gentleness, equanimity, detachment, in connection with the higher power. Suffering a lot of times is a very intense, like almost punch to the throat of look at me, from the divine, the sage, the creative, saying, look at me, rely on me, allow me to guide you. I felt very inspired to share all of that with you guys today. I mean, even through my journey, there's ups and downs. I'm tempted. I would love to have all the money in the world. Everyone, we all would, right? But what is that rooted in? Is that rooted in just my desire, my ego, my desire to just be free from all of this? That's okay for me to acknowledge that and to say, okay, I realize this. But when I really sit down and ask myself the question, well, what is the point of this? Where is my enthusiasm really rooted to attain such freedom? There's always abundance. There's abundance everywhere. The creative has offered us abundance at great magnitude. But where is our attention? How do we plan to attain this abundance? Will we do anything and harm others in order to achieve that abundance, Or will we allow ourselves to be centered and to seek truth and balance and peace? And that way, when we achieve our abundance is rooted in an inner divinity that is greater than our own mental comprehension. But that heart knows. And when you allow yourself to open the heart, to meditate on the heart, and to balance the heart with the mind, it all changes. So I'll leave you with some questions. Maybe you can spend some time asking yourself. These are some questions that I ask myself. What do I want? And I recommend, if you can, write it out, or if you have some sort of audio recording device, record your answer, or just speak it out loud, or do whatever. Tell someone about it. If you see a therapist, if you have someone that you trust, have a conversation about it. What do I want? What are my desires or my enthusiasm for life, or whatever it may be? What is it rooted in? And when I experience suffering, what do I do? Where do I turn? And what do I feel? Allow yourself to explore these questions. Ask them internally, ask them out loud, and be open to the answers that may come to you in any form. The answers can come by someone giving you advice. The answers can come from a feeling. The answers can come from an interesting experience that gives you an interesting answer. The way that the divine, the way that the sage, the way that the creative, the way that the higher power communicates with us, and the way that even our own souls communicate with us is on a level beyond what we are able to mentally, with our mind, comprehend. We have to allow it. Logic won't always win over. But if we allow ourselves to experience the answers to the questions in which we are seeking, we will have the answers. Just allow yourself to experience them. If you have any questions or concerns, if you want an I Ching reading done for yourself, I also do oracle readings. If you would like any type of reading done for yourself, any questions, concerns, would you like help on guidance with meditation, especially with the technique that I talked about, or if you would just like someone to talk to, you're seeking advice, whatever it may be, contact me. You can contact me at meditation.matters@yahoo.com. You can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook at meditation.matters. Again, my name is Naya Shell, and I'm the host of the Meditation Matters podcast, the founder of the brand and business in and of itself, and explorer of self, of truth, whatever it may be. I'm here for you, and I'm here to continue to connect us, me and you, us individually and us as a collective, to our divine inner truth, to our collective power, to our healing that already exists within, and to the importance of connecting to the higher power and turning to it for guidance and love. Thank you so much, and remember that you are divine. You are divinity expressed in a human form. And together, we can rise above, and we can spread love, and we can connect in a way that our minds can't even comprehend, but our souls and our hearts and everything in balance have always known and have been waiting for us to connect to. Namaste.